Why did Donald Trump attack Ron DeSantis? It wasn't over policy. It wasn't because he was liberal or he was moderate or whatever. It was because he stood in Donald Trump's way. It was a personal reason for attacking a man 2 days before an election.
Broadcaster, podcaster, head honcho at Americans for Prosperity, and good dresser. Jeff Crank, thanks for being here.
Only a couple of those things fit, John. I think that I'll choose those.
Actually, one.
Yeah, maybe one.
And it ain't the dresser. Actually, I thought I'd talk to you. We've been talking to a lot of folks about the recent Colorado carnage that's happened, but it's not just here. And since you've been plugged in a lot of other states, I thought I'd just ask you, is it as bad in other states? And when I say it, I should probably be more specific. Here in Colorado, conservatives, Republicans, had a seemingly reasonable expectation of some victories. No, maybe we wouldn't win back the Senate. Maybe we wouldn't win back the state house, but we would win back a few seats. We would get close enough that we could see victory in a majority on the horizon. Instead, we lost everything. Everything. You keep your eyes on a lot of different other seats. Before we go to D.C. for what's in play nationally, just what are you seeing on the state level and other places?
Well, it's a mixed bag. I mean, certainly Colorado has experienced, a lot of people who've moved in and brought their ideas, right, with them. And I think Colorado slipped further to the left. There's no doubt about it. But I do...
Slipped.
Well, slipped. I'm using the word loosely. Yeah, I understand.
Tiny little.
Fell off a cliff to the left, maybe. But I think in other states that you haven't seen that. There are states like Montana where there's been a little bit of a resurgence of conservatism. West Virginia is a great example of a state that's moving the other way. So there are bright spots, I think.
Let me grab West Virginia for just a second. Yeah. West Virginia has traditionally been one of the poorest, most backward welfare states in the country. All right, it's always been poverty-stricken. It's always been kind of the poster child for welfare queens, and it's been bad. But it's starting to become more and more of a freedom state. And that you're starting to see more and more people gravitate to West Virginia to I don't know, be left alone and start their businesses and do those things. So I don't know. I wonder if West Virginia becomes a future Colorado, Wyoming, Texas, where it becomes a refugee state for people who want to get away from collectivism.
It certainly could, and I think as the Democrat Party has slipped away from being the party of the working man, right, which I think they held that title for many years, but now they're sort of captive by these environmental extremists and sort of extremists on the left. I think the good working people of West Virginia, it's coal mining country and those sorts of things. I think that has turned them. I think the gun issue has turned a lot of people in states like West Virginia as well. So I think that's what you're seeing is they become more and more maybe of a refugee state for people who believe in liberty and freedom.
All right, so you keep an eye on a lot of the western states. Talk to me about Montana.
Yeah.
And that Montana has always been, how to put it politely, crazy. All right, so Montana is where Colts go because land is cheap and nobody wants to be there during the winter.
Land used to be cheap in Montana.
It's
not so
cheap
much anymore.
Really?
No.
Why so?
Well, they're getting a lot of Californians moving in as well. Bozeman is one of the most expensive places now.
You're kidding me.
No, it's amazing how much it's changed. Yeah, that's right.
All right, this... Excuse me while I bitch for just a moment. This is the problem. Here's the problem with them liberals, let me tell you, is that they keep going to the most beautiful places.
They do.
All right, so,
they do.
I've got a bunch of progressive friends, and so they come to Colorado, they're destroying the place, and they keep going to the most beautiful places. And so I've got a bunch of friends who've gotten sick of the Denver metro area and this area.
Sure.
Just too crowded, the crime's too bad, and it's like, yeah, all the stuff you made happen. And so now they're moving to Warford County, and they're buying all this land to get away from all the ugliness that they brought. And it's like they keep finding the little patches of gorgeousness, and so that they can bring it with them and make it unattainable for those of us who were here before they ruined it. And it's just like, you got to find one. So in other words, we all have to go, to Nebraska, to some god-awful flat place that has nothing but corn and only 10 feet of elevation difference in the whole state.
That's right.
That's the only place that, if we want to be left alone.
That's right. I own a place in Nebraska just for that very reason.
Do
In
you?
fact, yes, I do.
You seriously?
I do. Yeah. I bought a place in Nebraska, and I actually went there when Jared Polis closed Colorado right at the beginning of COVID. My wife and daughter and I just moved up there, and we just lived up there mask-free. Didn't worry about it for 2 months. So it was great.
Yeah, except being in Nebraska.
Well, Nebraska has some wonderful things about it.
Name 4, quickly.
Corn.
Not.
I can't name corn?
No, corn.
Pheasant hunting.
They have corn here.
Pheasant hunting.
They have pheasant hunting here.
They have good pheasant hunting in
All right,
Nebraska. Good pheasant hunting in
Quicker,
Nebraska.
faster.
Lake McConaughey.
The shallowest lake in the world.
Well, now it's the shallowest lake.
It was the shallowest lake ever.
Okay, I named 2, John. Can we move on?
No, I think I've won that round. All right, getting back to our topic.
Okay.
What have you seen around the country's other states? Because I look at, let me take a look at Michigan as we're taking our little potpourri. Here was a state where Republicans misplayed many things. I think, I'll take the abortion issue.
Right.
That this election was a mishandling of the abortion ruling. And I believe the abortion Supreme Court ruling was the right ruling. No matter how you feel about abortion, I don't believe it was. The Roe versus Wade ruling was a poor ruling on its face because it's not a constitutional issue. It was a tortured ruling. That's not a pro or con on abortion. It means it's a state issue. I'm agnostic on this. I'm really completely agnostic on it. But when the Republicans had a chance in Michigan to put a reasonable abortion law on instead of the 1931 law that they reverted to, which was a complete and total ban, they wouldn't do it. And so they could have put in a 20-week ban or something.
Sure.
Instead, they put a 100% ban.
Yeah.
And it caused this backlash.
Right.
And now they have Democratic governor with a Democratic legislature, and some of the policy wins that they've had in the last decade, including right to work, are now in danger. They could lose these policy victories, these freedom victories, because Republicans mishandled Roe versus Wade, and they needed to have every win all at once to be completely purist.
Yeah.
And I think this happened a lot. Do you think? How big was Roe versus Wade nationwide?
Well, I think in a lot of ways the Democrats. The way I phrase this whole election nationally is that I do believe there was a red wave, and that red wave was coming, but I believe that the Democrats did a good job of building up a bit of a blue wave to crash and make a purple wave, and some good things did come out of it nationally. I think we're not going to have $5 trillion spending bills coming down the pike because we now have divided government, albeit by a few votes in the House, but that makes all the difference in the world, as you know. I think that on issues, I think the Democrats did a very good job of energizing their base on the abortion issue, particularly young college-age women on that issue, and on the student loan issue, right? I mean, they had that whole group energized. And then I think a third group that they were able to energize was kind of their base with the democracy's in danger and going to be stolen and, the hatred for Donald Trump. So I think those three things created a bit of a blue wave that crashed against a red wave. Because I do think the red wave was coming. I think people generally frustrated, obviously, with the price of gas, the inflation, mortgage rates, and those sorts of things. But they energized their base enough to fight us to a draw.
Isn't
in
it
some
funny
ways.
that those of us who are who are junkies in this stuff.
Yeah.
Guys like us. We look at the abortion issue here in Colorado.
Right.
And we scratch our heads going, it's a non-issue.
Right.
Who cares if O'Day is elected or not? He's pro-abortion. It doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter who the governor is because the abortion laws in Colorado are arguably the most liberal in the country.
Sure.
And that's not going to change. So it's a non-issue. But we forget that people who swing the election, when I say they're ignorant, it's not an insult. It's just they have lives.
Yeah.
And so they don't know necessarily that Colorado has a guaranteed abortion up until the moment of birth, and it is the most liberal abortion laws in the nation, and it's not going to change. They might actually think abortion is in danger here in Colorado.
Sure.
And so they get scared, and it's those 10%, 15% in the middle. And we think they actually know the truth.
Well, and if you even look at Joe O'Day. I mean, no matter what you thought of his position on it, the reality was the Supreme Court removed it from the federal government's control.
Right.
I mean, if I were running for federal office and was asked about it, that would generally be my answer is Supreme Court said that we can't really touch it, right? We can't guarantee nor deny in this.
Although
that's left up to the states.
He did say, I would vote to codify something to protect a woman's right up to
Sure.
this right.
Well, I think
I don't even know if they have the right to do that.
Yeah.
But
I think Joe O'Day very much mishandled the abortion issue from beginning to end. I think he alienated his base. I think that's just one of those issues you have to tell folks where you are on it and stick with it. Don't try and split hairs and run up the middle. It never works. It's kind of like gun rights. You either are for the Second Amendment or you're not for the Second Amendment. And if you try and be too cute on it, both sides don't like you. And on the abortion issue, on a Joe O'Day or any other candidate, they're not going to vote for you if they think the other person is better on the issue anyway. Those voters who that's their issue and they're pro-choice on that issue, they voted for Michael Bennet and they were always going to vote for Michael Bennet if that's their big issue.
If that's their big issue.
Right.
I think Republicans, conservatives thought the economic pain was much harder on people than they thought it was, than people actually felt.
Mm-hmm.
And it got me thinking afterwards that buying people's votes, softening the blow, putting people on the dole really works.
Sure.
Give you a couple examples. Colorado, of course, Proposition FF, usually the most morally bankrupt thing on the ballot. Stealing money from rich guys to pay for free food for just slightly lesser rich guys' kids.
Sure.
And at the same time, building up an argument to make sure that rich guys never give to charity again, because why would I give to charity if I lose the tax deduction?
Sure.
So rich guys lose money, slightly lesser rich guys get money, and poor guys are going to get screwed in the end. Mm-hmm. Just brilliant all around.
Right.
But beyond that, student loans getting that forgiveness.
Yeah.
Biden draining the emergency reserves of petroleum to near nothing to keep gas prices at an artificially low level. We're going to be paying for that pretty soon. Getting people addicted to money during COVID, which is another reason everyone wanted a free lunch, because we gave them free lunches.
Of course.
And so putting people on the dole. So this idea that we gave people money that was made up out of thin air and that cushioned people enough that they could care about Trump being mean-sounding, the abortion issue, which wasn't an issue, at least in Colorado, free lunches, that carried the day rather than 15% inflation in Colorado and the economy turning around. That we looked at this and go, this is the issue.
Sure. We're
on a precipice economically, and you're concerned about Trump being mean? Who cares about Trump being mean?
Well, and I think, there's so many issues and like the student loan payoff deal. I mean, that's such a great example because so many people really were disenfranchised for that. Think of all the people, and I know you've talked about this, John, but all of the people who chose not to go to college and take out a student loan, but they went to trade school, became a welder, and now they're having to pay for the bad decisions that somebody else made.
Or the idiots who went to college and paid their way.
And paid their way, like,
Or paid back their loans?
Right.
What morons are you? How dare you be financially responsible?
Yeah, and I think Republicans just didn't do a good job of telling those stories and connecting with those voters to say, look, this is unfair. You're getting hit twice. You got hit the first time by them making the decision that they were going to fund someone else's education. But now they're coming back to you and saying, well, they don't really need to pay it back. You're going to pay it back. As a welder, you're going to get to pay this back. So we didn't do a good job of connecting with those voters. Our side didn't. And we didn't do a good job of mobilizing those people on those issues. Now, it's also a little bit understandable that maybe we didn't do as well as we should, because we don't own the mechanics of the media. We don't own social media.
You're a podcaster. You've got it all.
I know, I've got it all. But, that's the narrative that's been driven. If you turned on NBC Nightly News, they would tell you how great it was. They'd be telling you the stories of, the young guy who went and got his theater degree and now doesn't have to pay it back. So they're telling you how great that is. So, we don't have those levers to pull. We don't have social media. It's one of the reasons they're so upset about Elon Musk's purchase of Twitter, right? Is they have an ironclad lock on that, and they just take the Democrat talking points and march on. That's how they've stayed in power all these years. So it's tough for us to tell those stories, but I think we've got to get better at those stories. And I even think that on the abortion issue. If there's a pro-life advocate out there, we got to stop talking about, the constitutionality of it and those sorts of things. You've got to tell the stories. And women, by the way, who are pro-life need to lead on telling those stories.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons that I've always felt uncomfortable talking about the abortion issue.
Right.
Because I'm not a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm tired of listening to men talk about the sanctity of life. No, let the women lead on this debate. And it's an important debate. I get that.
Yeah.
And finally, the debate is where it belongs, in the public square.
Sure.
Instead of 9 old men in black robes. It's one of the reasons Europeans look at us and go, "What?
Right.
What is with you people? We solved this problem
But
decades ago."
But John, even that is an example of how the left runs the narrative, right? On the abortion issue, there are people running around after the Dobbs decision came out saying, how dare these 9 justices come out with this decision and tell us what we can do or not do with our body. Well, that's what you've been doing since 1972. This has changed it, but we're not getting that narrative out, that's the reality.
It also speaks to the black and whiteness that I think our side looks at, which is, we had this case, so go back to Michigan.
Right.
So let's just swallow this victory in one big chunk, go back to a 1930 law, outlaw everything. Right. Even in the case, this and this and this, rape and for the life of the mom or health of the infant or whatever it is, with in such black and whiteness, instead of saying, let's just slow down here.
Sure.
And let's do a 15-week ban, and then we'll reevaluate in a few years, take the temperature of the state, and win the hearts and minds.
And
first.
and the states that have made progress in the area of pro-life issues have done that.
Yeah.
They've taken a little bit here and then a little bit more, and they've done it incrementally,
because
just like you said.
Socialism
right.
gains because it's done incrementally.
Of course.
This has been growing since FDR.
Right.
And you see the spikes during the Great Society and during Obama.
Sure.
And now. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Let's not look backward. Let's look forward.
Okay.
All right. So now we finally have what we hope is a stopgap with this tiny, slim little majority in the House.
Right.
Nothing scares me more than a Republican majority anywhere, because Republicans are spectacular in the minority. They beat their chests. They sound like Republicans. They talk like Republicans. They care about limited government. They care about taxes, and they care about gun rights. Man, there is nothing like a Republican minority.
Sure.
But as soon as they get one vote, man, all it takes is one of them, and they squish out. Let's remember, when George W. had presidency, the House and the Senate, let's see, what did we do? Bridges to nowhere, debt like we've never seen before. We outlawed a light bulb. We outlawed a light bulb, the great American invention. We outlawed a free speech with McCain-Feingold. I mean, this is what Republicans do.
Right.
So we can't be too happy about that. I do see some benefits here. I think some of the bad stuff, hopefully we can slow down.
Yeah.
I hope this is the beginning of the end of the Trump era. And what I mean by that is, as a guy who was a reluctant Trump voter, and then the second time around, a very enthusiastic Trump voter, and then after seeing his terrible behavior on January 6th, no matter if you thought it was stolen, you didn't think it was stolen, to sit back and watch your Capitol being attacked and doing nothing for hours, and it was just unforgivable. And after this election, it has become very clear to me that Trump could destroy the Republican Party. This might be the beginning of the end of Trump. I see this as a positive.
Yeah. Well, I think Republican voters have a choice to make, right? Do they want to be principled? I said this the other day, and I think this is pretty apropos thought, but Ronald Reagan loaned himself to the conservative movement, right? He said, I've got this, he thought, although he didn't say it, but, I've got this personality, I've got this celebrity, I want to run, but I want to do it for the cause. I think Donald Trump used conservatism for himself, right? And that's the difference between what Reagan did and what Trump did. And that is Donald Trump. I mean, there's lots of positive things about Donald Trump that we can see.
Lots of positive things that happened during his presidency.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, you could say that Donald Trump's presidency was as much, maybe even more transformational than Reagan's when it came to policy.
Yes.
When it came to patriotism, no, I don't think so. Yeah, you're right. Trump is all about Trump.
Right.
And the policy was a wonderful byproduct.
Yeah.
But
I think the problem that Trump created throughout many of throughout his presidency, right? What is the point? He wasn't very disciplined, number one. And what is the point when you go and you start calling Carly Fiorina a dog face, right? It alienates voters, and it alienates more and more people. And Ronald Reagan understood you needed to cobble together a majority. You went and got the pro-Second Amendment folks, and then you went out and got the pro-life folks, and then you went out and got the economic conservatives and the less government folks, and you cobbled together a majority to run a country. Donald Trump's actions did then, and they continue to be very divisive. You make women think, well, why did he have to attack Carly Fiorina and her looks? You don't attack women on their looks. I mean, these are things that he's just, I think, in so many ways, so undisciplined in the way that he approaches things. I thought what he did in this last election, to go to Ohio to campaign for J.D. Vance, a candidate that he supported and got through the primary, to go there 2 nights before the election and spend, an hour and a half or more talking about himself, very little time having J.D. Vance talk, but it was all about himself, promoting that, hey, there's going to be a big announcement. There might be a big announcement so that all the media listens. And then the big announcement turns out that he's going to make an announcement the following week. And in that very same speech, attacks a Republican governor in Ron DeSantis who's on the ballot in Florida. As Republicans, you don't attack other Republicans right in the middle of a firefight. And I think that was shocking to a lot of Republicans who want to win. And I think you're right to say it's got to be less about personality. If we're going to win, we have to look at the issues and we have to lay out a vision for America of
when
what
I
we
say
see.
when I say it could be the beginning of the end
Yeah.
of Trump, let me lay it out this way. In that, the election for 2024 starts now.
Yeah.
And everybody, all the pieces are lining up. Jared Polis is lining up, wondering if what's Biden going to do? Is he going to drop dead tomorrow? I don't know. What's going to happen? And most certainly, DeSantis is a contender.
Yeah.
And for my money, he's the horse I would want to bet on.
Yeah.
He for me has shown me this is a guy who can be like Trump, but not be Trump.
Right.
Now. And also for me, just for me,
Yeah.
he shows me as a guy who could bring Trump voters over if Trump were to lose a primary, that these Trumpies could perhaps vote for this guy in the general, maybe even hold their nose, but still vote for this guy. Whereas Trump voters are not going to vote for Marco Rubio. They're not going to vote for Chris Christie. They're not going to vote for anybody else.
Right.
This is why when DeSantis sends illegals up to Martha's Vineyard or Kamala Harris's front yard, that's Trumpy.
Yeah.
But he's not calling anybody dogface.
That's right.
And so I see that there's a personality there that might be able to pull over some of these Trumpy voters when they get the idea Trump's just not going to do it, and Trump is one of the big reasons, as you stated, that Republicans didn't have this wave. That almost, not every, but almost everything that Trump touched in 2022 died.
Well, yeah, I think you're right about Ron DeSantis and who he is. I mean, he is kind of in your face, but in a less offensive way than Donald Trump is. He's very bold.
And he governed. The difference is he governed.
He did.
He governed through COVID. He governed
did.
after, and his reelection was by so much more than his original election.
Right.
What was it? He just barely won the first time, and he got 10 points on the second time. Whereas Dr. Oz lost to Fetterman. What did somebody say? This guy looked like your high school janitor. How is he a senator?
Right. Yeah. No question. Ron DeSantis, I do think, and I think he's playing it smart right now, right? He's letting Trump get out there, do his thing, and my guess is Ron DeSantis is probably going to run for president. I think you're very correct in that he has a lot of the qualities that Trump voters like about Donald Trump, the shake it up kind of mentality, but he's much more disciplined in his messaging.
When he said Florida is where woke goes to die,
right?
That is more than just good policy.
Sure.
That says I'm willing to enter a cultural battle. And I wonder if a lot of Americans are ready for that cultural battle. I think they are.
Yeah, I think they are. And not only did he say that, but his policies have shown that he's willing to stand up against sort of that woke culture as well. And you look at what I've thought about this. Why did Donald Trump attack Ron DeSantis? It wasn't over policy. It wasn't because he was liberal or he was moderate or whatever. It was because he stood in Donald Trump's way. It was a personal reason for attacking a man 2 days before an election. So I think there's
one of Reagan's commandments.
One of Reagan's commandments, right? And again, it goes back to Ronald Reagan did what he did for the cause because he believed in the cause. I think Donald Trump used the cause, the conservative cause, to advance himself.
Give me a definition of the cause.
Well,
and the reason I ask that is because the cause has gotten very, very blurry. And when you and I were young, when you were young and I was still old, the cause was pretty clear that Republicans wanted less government, we wanted less regulation. There was a sense that Democrats were pro-union, pro-labor, pro-taxes, a bit more pro-welfare. But today, I don't know where that is, in that you've got a lot more Republicans that are pro-protectionism, you've got a lot of Republicans that are pro-labor, and you've got a lot of Democrats that are anti-free speech, where they were pro-free speech in the past. You've got a lot of elites that are now the Democrats. It is quite a mixed up thing. So what is the cause?
Well, that's a bigger question than I can answer, but I would say I don't think it is a Democrat or Republican thing anymore, right? I think it is, to me, what it is, and I guess we all kind of have our definition, but I think how Ronald Reagan would have described it is, putting the individual above the collective, right? Going back to the basics of the Bill of Rights, that those are God-given rights that protect us, and government can only interfere in that. And that's what the Bill of Rights is about, is stopping government from collectively quashing individuals. So I think that's an important part of it. I think economic growth and getting government out of our lives and out of making the decisions for us and letting us prosper in the way that we see prosperity. So to me, I guess that's what it would be. That's why I fight. Those are the reasons I fight. I suppose for other people it's different. But that's generally, I think, the tenets of a movement that Ronald Reagan sort of capitalized on, took control of, and helped lead in the 1980s. And I think it's where we stand. I know it's where you and I stand as allies in this fight as well.
There's only one major problem. Let's leave it at this.
Okay.
We cannot vote for DeSantis.
Okay. Why?
Bastard is 44 years old. When Obama became president, and he's basically my age, I was like, this can't happen. Only a president can be older than me. That's just the way that is. There can never be a president that is younger than me, not to mention considerably younger than me. That is a non-starter.
You do understand.
Shut up.
You do understand.
Just shut up. I don't want to hear it. Whatever it is, why don't we just leave it at that? Let's just all agree at that.
Sounds good.
Jeff,
Let's leave
thanks
it there.
so much. Hey, people want to listen to the podcast, want to follow what you're doing, where do they go?
Sure. They can find it on jeffcrank.com. That's the website, but you can find it on any podcast platform that's out there. Spotify, Google, any of those.
Crank.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, John.
If you enjoyed that conversation, by all means, click one of these other great programs. We have the best conversations with the most fascinating Coloradans. And subscribe to our channel. Just click down below and hit that little bell button too. You don't want to miss a single show.